Hello and welcome to Talking Points. Talking Points are our weekly show where we round up everything Tottenham. And today we are rounding up after the transfer window closed yesterday. And we are going to look at how the squad looks now. I am joined up before I go to my guest. Let me give my introduction. I always forget to do that. I'm Sam Spurs for Life and I'm joined in the house by Mike-Hotspur Hustler, Sid Says, Jack Kanicki and Stelios from Tottenham Away. Welcome, gentlemen. How are we all doing and how are we feeling now the transfer window is closed? I'll start with our guest. Start with Mr. Stelios, Tottenham Away. How are you feeling, sir? You all right?
I'm feeling rough. I'm feeling battered. I don't know what's wrong with me. I think I've got flu, but I just did a stream for Holly and I'm doing a stream for you. And I said, you know what? I'm not letting you guys down. There's no way. I've been waiting so long to do Paxton Road TV that, you know, Sam, I had him on my show 6 months ago. Absolute liberty. Didn't even invite me on his show for 6 months. I'm having to... No, I'm joking. Great to be on the show, man. Looking forward to it.
That's fantastic. Remember, I had to wait about 6 months to get on your show. I was on a waiting list. So, therefore... you had to wait 6 months as well. Welcome, Jack, Flat Cap Euro Talk. He's the famous one from the double dynamic duo from the Irish Hotspur and Jack. Welcome. He's got Flat Cap in tow. How are you doing? You all right?
Doing quite well, Shane. Thanks for having me. You know, I'm weirdly doing, honestly, quite excited. You know, woke up with a bit of a smile on my face, considering the window as well. You would probably think that wouldn't be the case, but just kind of, taking each day at a time.
Fantastic. I'm not even going to ask them two above how they are because I'm always talking to them a lot, but I know that they're okay. Sid, what's he doing? He's got his new camera now. What are you doing, Sid? Come on now.
I'm just plugging in my laptop. My battery's running low.
Okay. That's good. Welcome to those watching. We've already got Sean here watching. Sean, regular guest of ours. Here we go. Let the banter begin and the bitching start. Stitching. Come on, you Spurs. There's no bitching. It's adult conversation. We're going to have discussions. We might not all agree, but there's no bitching. And the Spurs. Yes. Evening all and Stelios. Joking. Love the guy. You got some trolls out there, Stel. They're on your case already. They must know.
Every day, every minute, in my sleep, when I'm awake, when I'm out of the country.
Jelly and ice cream, yes, lads. Top of the table vibes. I think that's true for us, and we've got 2 weeks more at least of that. And the last one from Paul Kane. I think I'm working out Stella's. He's a top boy, actually, to be honest. What's going on, Stella? What's going on with these shows that you've got? What's going on? They seem to love you. Are you the Marmite of the Tottenham community? Huh?
Cult hero.
More Vegemite. Vegemite.
Vegemite.
Oh, brilliant. Absolutely super. Yeah. Well, we may as well start the show. That's a good way to start the show. A bit of banter. We always got to try and do that on this show. But we do always try and talk things serious as well, but not to take ourselves too seriously. That's the biggest thing. Right, let's do this. As the show suggests, as I've said at the top of the show, the window's now closed. Spurs have made a number of signings. To some, it's been a good window. To others, it's been not such a good window, or somewhere in between. What for me, a lot of the vibes around the team is now about the rebuild. We look like we're in a bit of a process. I go back to when Jose was here come April, and it just looked like the whole thing was falling down. Wall was falling down around. How could we come out of this? There's been things that have been done. Director of football now in place, Paratici, and a process has begun. Not to everybody's liking the way that things have been done, but there is definitely a sea change from what has happened previously. It doesn't appear to be as much of a scattergun approach. But is the squad in a position now for us to maintain a push towards top 4, a push towards top 6, a push towards a trophy? This is the questions I guess we'll get to ask. So I'm going to start off with Mike. I'm going to start off with you as the opening gambit. How does the squad now look to you?
How does the squad look to me now? I'm relatively comfortable with it. I mean, I think all Tottenham fans probably agree. In an ideal world, we would have got a second striker in, and probably some form of creative, some sort of creative attacking player. My preference probably would have been more of a right winger than a centre midfielder, because I think we've got abundance in the centre of the park. But right wing, I think that's probably where we're slightly lacking, other than obviously the strike position. I think from last season, my main concern wasn't so much us scoring goals, it was us conceding them. And with whatever Nuno's done in the background in the resurgence of some of those centre-backs, Sanchez and Dyer, obviously the main culprits, the fact that since that Arsenal game in pre-season, I think that's their fourth game where they've not conceded a goal. So something's obviously happened with Nuno coming in, and whatever training, whatever coaching he's done with that back line, something seems to be working. So with Romero coming in, and Merson coming in at right back, I'm, from a defensive perspective, I don't foresee us leaking silly, stupid goals like we did last season. And on the back of that, given the fact that the team now, compared to the Mourinho days, where the team is far more, or looks far more fitter, then those silly mistakes and that led to goals, etc., should be cut out. So from the window itself, with the players that we've brought in, the players that I know, there's players that we've brought in that they're not in the team. I.e., Sarr, he's on for the future. I'm relatively comfortable. I mean, if we cope for the next 4 months, and then we go in January and look for a backup striker there to see us through to the rest of the season, and again, I'm relatively comfortable, because I don't think scoring goals is our issue as such. I know we can say, well, the Watford game, we lacked goals. We got a lucky free kick, but you're going to get that during the season where teams are going to park the bus. And I mean, we could have 20 shots on goal. We might not score one. It could be just one of those games. And I know Wolves, we got a penalty in that game against Wolves, but again, I think we were creating chances. We just weren't putting the ball in the back of the net. So, for our first window with Paratici coming in, the players that we've got out, I mean, you got Sissoko and Lamela, and we've just got out Aurier, haven't we? So there's 3 players there that I think, if we're all honest to ourselves, we probably thought, certainly Sissoko, we'd probably struggle to get out, and we've managed to do that. Lamela being injury prone, we've managed to get him out and reduce them off the books in terms of wages, etc. So for first window, I think it's been a fairly decent window myself. That's just my opinion, but.
Well, we'll come and look at the individual names in terms of who's gone in and who's gone up. I just wanted to get everybody's kind of opening thoughts as how they think the squad looks, and obviously we can then judge in terms of the differences, where we might be short, where we might be strong, etc. I'll come to Stel next. Stel, how's the squad looking to you?
It's looking very much like if, buts, and maybes. I don't think we bought enough. Well, no, we didn't buy enough players that we needed of quality for the positions that I think we really need, and for me that was a letdown. But we have got rid of a lot of players, which was impressive. And that was very good, because it means now those players can't come on and play for Spurs. So in terms of how the squad's looking, I think we're depending on players that are on last chance saloon to step up. So Dele Alli, Bergwijn, Sanchez, Dyer, Lo Celso, Ndombele, Doherty's. These players, we're depending on them to really raise their game and have a good season. And that's what I mean by if, buts, and maybes. Plus the players that have come in, we let's be honest, we don't know what they're going to do yet. They could hit or they could miss. So I think it's very difficult to judge. After 10 games would be a good point to judge. After the January transfer window, it would be a really good time to judge. And then as we get to the latter part of the season, I think we know what's what by then. But right now, it's impossible to say, Sam. It's so difficult to say. Just got to enjoy the fact we're top of the league, but I fear our attacking Nous unless Nuno changes the way we play. I think we can do it, but I think Nuno needs to change it up.
Okay. Well, we can still. What I say, obviously, we have to judge in terms of results. So that's obviously going to be in the future. But in terms of a transfer window, had we go back to last year's summer one, where we signed Bell, people were like mega excited. I was a bit mega excited because you're bringing back someone like Gareth Bell. And if we look at bringing in names and we did that, everybody would say, well, that player's going to do that because of their past history. The fact is, nobody knows what a player's going to do. Nobody knows if a player's going to stay fit. Nobody knows how many games that player's going to do, whether or not they're on the slide, all the things. We can only judge by, I guess, our own thoughts if we know about football and how that player might be potential or what they've done in the past. So someone like Gareth Bell, you would look at it and think, fantastic signing. My personal opinion, after seeing what Gareth Bell did last season, I weren't quite sure. We saw possibly Gareth Bell as a player that the reason why maybe someone like Real Madrid were prepared to let him go out on loan. We picked up a 300k tab. Whether or not that was a player that we actually needed, I'm not quite so sure at the price that we were paying, but I can understand why we did it. So now I look at the players that we've got in, and there's a lot of potential there. But as you quite rightly said, we don't have a clue as to what these guys are going. So I'm going to ask you, Jack, based on this comment here from Sean, given the in-trade that Levy left Paratici, he's done a halfway decent job, rejuvenated the squad and got some players out of the door. Couldn't solve everything in one window. So what's your thoughts on that?
I don't think he could, solve everything in one window. I mean, you kind of have the handicap of, having Levy as your owner. You also have, the handicap of not, having a very kind of stingy manager as well or owner as well, when you think about it. So him coming in, he also came in practically halfway through the window from what it felt like. It felt like he did the most that he could. Maybe he probably could have brought in maybe one more on deadline day, you might say, center mid, maybe backup striker. Probably those are the two ones that I've been hearing be shouted out the most, but it's kind of instant as what you can tell the differences between Paratici and Hitchen. I mean, we're signing players that are all mostly under 24, under 23 players that will probably be sold on for, huge sums if they were to work out. And that's something that we could see Levy definitely enjoying, as well as, Paratici and, the Spurs fans enjoying. I mean, personally, as a young kind of fan, I kind of like signing, players in and around kind of under 23, under 24 kind of age, just because it is kind of a good business model for not only the club but also just the players. It's good to have that type of young prospect coming through the squad. I think we kind of looked in the right places.
Talking of young prospects, just to add in here, here's a young prospect for us. He's joined us finally. He's got his headphones sorted.
He's just woken up.
He's in the house.
I can actually hear you guys. I'm so happy.
We're just bringing you in. There was a good opportunity to do that. But I'll go back to Jack.
I like the segue, by the way. That was a good segue, by the way. I'll give you a round of applause.
Thank you. I'm trying to keep that professionalism up, as you can see. Not doing a great job, but I'm trying my best. Anyway, Jack, back to you.
Yeah, I was just going to finish and say, some of the prospects we even kind of signed, I randomly even shouted out on, some of the talents I'm kind of looking at and, all of kind of the Europe's top 5 leagues, and that was Emerson. So it's just kind of a bit of a shock, to kind of see us linked with a bunch of players that, I would say a bunch of outlets and medias that have no connection to Spurs or even interest in Spurs whatsoever are kind of saying like, yeah, actually, that's a pretty great move by Spurs. Yeah, that's a player we've always been looking at. And sure, a lot of these players are not necessarily proven. Sure, a lot of these players are not, the household names that we probably wanted. But at the same time, you could also look at it as being, a bit of an interesting way to rebuild the squad, and a way to rebuild the squad that personally I'm kind of satisfied with. But in no way would I say it's done. In no way would I say it's over. It's probably a bit over, maybe 50%, but just barely, I would say, over. So, we still have a long way to go.
Okay. Darius, what's your thoughts before I come to Sid not Sid last? I will come to Sid at the end of this before we get into it. Darius, what's your thoughts on the squad?
I think for me, until January, and that's why I'm looking at January next, because obviously that's the next window. Until January, I think the squad's pretty good, to be honest. I believe that losing sort of players in key positions and replacing them with players of a younger age and of better quality is only a positive, in my opinion. I understand that that certain positions weren't attended to, and I believe that we probably could have bought another centre back. I think that a striker was probably needed, and I definitely believe that a centre mid, either a destroyer or a creative midfielder, was needed. But again, I don't know if you guys have mentioned it, but I'm probably sure you guys have mentioned that you can't get everything done in one window, and to sort of start where we've started and get rid of the players that we've been trying to get rid of for so long. We've even terminated contracts, and I was even saying, like, Arsenal last year in January, they had Ozil, they had Socrates on their wage bill, and they needed to get rid of those players before they even wanted to bring in any players of their sort of age range and target. So for me, to see that we're terminating Aurier's contract and not
Darius, sorry, I beg you don't compare us to Arsenal.
I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to do that in any sort of way, but it's the only team that I can think of that in recent memory, they sort of had this issue of not being able to get rid of players, and they're showing their soft side by not terminating contracts. And when you terminate someone's contract, you're showing that we don't want you here anymore, and we're actually willing to pay you to leave, and that shows that they're actually building something. So I'm happy with the window this summer. I am 100% in agreement with everybody that we need to improve, but what I do think is, I think it's hard to criticize sort of not buying for now, because how and what do people expect us to do with the teams that are above us and sort of the current situation of the league? I understand that cups are a very important thing and squad depth is a very important thing, but for me, if you can get players who are very, very reputable and are very young, you've got a coach like Nuno who needs impressionable youngsters to sort of instill his ideas, and that's the best way to sort of fast track your identity and fast track your ideas, is to bring in young players who are willing to listen. So I just think that the way we're trying to go and sort of the plan that we've got is the best plan, or the best sort of people that you need are younger players who are willing to learn. And like you said, Jack Clark and Brian Hill are two very different quality players, and that's what I always try to compare. What
I want to do with Darius is I want to come back into more discussion about whether we think this squad is for now or for the future. I think there's probably some obvious in that anyway, but can we compete now? Can we compete in the future? Is it built for both, or is it kind of looking one way or the other? Sid, before we get into the real discussion, let me just get your thoughts on what you think of the squad currently.
I think all the guys have said it all, haven't we? We've got rid of the players that we wanted to, but for me, the way we've done business is the opposite way around to what, say, the likes of Chelsea and all them lot have done it. We should have got rid of the players first, like the likes of Sissoko, Aurier, Lamela. Once we've got rid of them, then we would have known exactly who to go for, because I've done success for about 8 weeks, and the amount of players that I said we were linked with and Spurs were linked with, we've probably ended up getting 2, if whatever. A lot of the positions that we wanted, I agree with what Darius and they were saying as well. We needed another centre-back. Okay, we've replaced the right-back, fair enough. But we're crying out for a creative midfielder, and we create a person on the right. And for me, I know it's his first window, but I think the main people that we really needed, and in the first 3 games, even in pre-season, it's proven we need a creative midfielder. Now, Mikel Damsgaard was one of them. We was linked with him before Euros, straight after Euros, for the first week or 2 of the transfer window. Then it all went dead. Then it resurfaced. Then it went dead. And then in the last day, it come back up again. So what I don't understand is all these players that we were linked with, we should have at least gone and got someone. Or was it just what like I said all along, was it just cloak and dagger, Daniel Levy telling everyone that we're going for this player, we're going for that player, get all the Spurs hopes high. And as always, at the end of the transfer window, we've got what we needed, but it's not enough, if you know what I mean, to take us that step forward. All we've done is we've done like for like. We've got rid of a right back. We've got a right back. We've got rid of Lamela and we bought Hill. We've got, striker issue. We've said this many times before. We didn't get a striker, whether it be a backup striker or someone to play with Kane. We need someone. And that's a topic of conversation another day, because obviously Son and Kane, everyone thinks or saying that Son can be the number 9. I don't personally think he can, but we needed a backup striker and a creative midfielder. But apart from that, I think we've got to give Nuno a chance. We've got to give Paratici a chance.
Haven't we got creative midfielders?
I was going to say that. I'm going to just answer some of them points, and I want us to have these discussions. I want it to kind of be back and forth, and everybody come in, chirp up. I don't want anybody to think they can't say anything. Right, I personally believe, this is my personal opinion, so don't shoot the messenger. I think we've got a better squad than last season, in my personal opinion. I also believe the thing with the backup striker hasn't worked. Vinicius, Vincent Janssen, Soldado, Llorente, all these players, all brought in to back up Kane, not worked out. Now, from when I saw Kane out of the team with his contract situation and his potential move to Man City, we saw a potential blueprint of how they could play. We saw Son up front, we saw the wide players in a 4-3-3. I personally believe that that's the way we were going to play if we never had Kane after the September 1st. I believe Son can be and would be the man to take that position. Now, is he going to score 25 goals every single season for the next 5 seasons? Possibly not. Can he get us 15 to 20 goals? Well, I think he's proved that he could probably do that. So I think that that was a better model now that Harry Kane is here, that we can use him as the supplementary striker. We'd be very, very unlucky if both of those players got injured at the same time. Because that's what people are saying to me. Well, if they both get injured, we still ain't got a backup striker. Well, if we had, when they were both injured last time, Jose Mourinho still didn't play Vinicius in all them games. He left him on. So that tells me there's a reason for that. So any player that we bring in, unless they are of the level that's going to challenge Kane, there's no point, in my opinion, bringing in any striker.
It's always going to be difficult, though, to bring in a striker of what, not even equal, but even quality below Kane, because you're trying to convince a player to sort of play a bit part role, or you have to change your formation and play 2 up front. So for me, instead of trying to get an out-and-out striker, you go and get an inside forward who can score a lot of goals and he can play 2 roles. So for me, a player like Daniel Marlon, who can play up front but also play left wing, is a better option than getting a big striker or a main striker like Vinicius, because it just allows you to sort of give him a reason to sort of not even sit on the bench, but you can say, look, you can play on the left or you can play up front if Kane gets injured. If you buy a striker while Kane's at the club, for example, Paxton Road Tv we were linked with, his agent said he's not going to join because he's not going to get game time. So you have to sort of be smart with who you buy and who you purchase, because buying a striker with Kane in your team is not going to be easy, or buying a good striker with Kane on your team is not going to be easy, and convincing him that you're going to be able to play him is not going to be easy. So I just think it's about, but maybe buying the utility player for that forward role, just because you can convince them that they can get more minutes, and maybe competitions is another thing. Maybe you can say, look, you're playing certain competitions, but I just think it's hard to convince a striker of a good quality to join while Kane was at the club at all.
So I'm going to ask the question of our guests, and I'm going to ask Jack first, and then I'm going to ask Stel. Do you think our squad now is better than it was last season? I'll start with you, Jack, then I'll come to Stel. And then give me your reasons, either way.
I think it is simply because, we've almost had, signings that aren't really exactly, signings in the sense of Skippy, in the sense of Sessegnon. It's almost like Tanganga is almost like a new signing at this stage as well. So you kind of just add those 3. I would say that already makes us a better squad. Then on top of signing, Serie A's best center back and Christian Romero, if you were to tell me if I were to have rather Serie A's best center back last season or Toby Alderweireld, who was kind of causing some stir in the dressing room, also just kind of, it's not like he was really becoming a poor center back, but you were probably kind of noticing the 33-year-old kind of tendencies and kind of him being a bit off the pace in certain moments. And his ping ability was actually statistically nowhere near as good as it used to be. And you kind of just take all those things into account. Adding Christian Romero is a big step up. Getting rid of Joe Hart as the backup goalkeeper. I just still every day, I'm just probably thanking the Lord for that. Especially Galini as someone who could potentially, replace Lloris, just potentially. I think that's pretty good business. And then bringing in Brian Hill instead of Lamella. Lamella only played something like 700 Premier League minutes last season. And so if Hill were to even get close to that, I would find that to be a success as well. So take, Sessegnon, Skippy, Tanganga, all those things, as well as the new signings. Honestly, fantastic team, if you ask me.
Okay, I'm going to ask still the same thing, because as I said, this is not about us agreeing on all these things. It's giving the reasons, because there are reasons why some people look at this as being a weaker squad, and I can accept that. Scott, Stel, what's your thoughts on the squad itself? Better, worse than last season? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's the same. Defensively, we're better. I think we've got rid of Aurier, which is good. We've got rid of Sissoko from the holding mid, which is good. Skip's come in, brilliant. Romero, good signing. Toby, his legs were going. We've still got Roland to come in, and we've got the right back Royale. By the way, his surname's not Royale. I read
Yeah,
this.
is that a nickname?
His dad just made that name up for him. He just gave it to him. I don't know why. He said his name's Emerson.
He looked like someone who was from the royal family of I don't know which.
He's that classy, family. So I'm told. He's that classy, so I'm told he dines with kings like way here.
There you go, man. He only goes Michelin star restaurants, so he's right. But yeah, I think defensively we're better, 100%. I think attack wise, I think we're not as good. Bale's goals haven't been replaced. Love him, hate him. Lamella pops up with goals that hasn't been replaced. We're just so dependent on Son and Kane again, and I'm not convinced. Kane's heart is in this. I was at the game against Watford. Just little things I saw. I'm not saying he's not going to be a professional, but I don't think he's 100%. And I get that, because once you want out and you don't get out, you don't suddenly wake up every morning and say yes. You don't come home from your work and say, yeah, good day, enjoyed my day. Because at the back of your head, you're still thinking, all right, one more year, then I can go. Just one more year. So I'm not totally convinced by Kane being 100% this year. So attack-wise, I think we're so depending on players to do something. We really are depending on them to click and start scoring goals. But defensively, I'm actually quite confident defensively.
Okay. Were we really looking at people like Lamella? I know that Lamella was with us for how many years was Lamella here at the club? 8 years?
7
or 8, yeah.
He was probably on the bench for about 7 of them. In terms of, you know what I'm saying?
He was on the treatment bench for 7 of them.
Treatment bench as well for probably 5 of them. But the rest of the time, he was never really a mainstay player. I know he had a few goals and he popped up. Yeah, we're always going to remember the Rabona. We're always going to remember the shithousery that he did against Manchester United and all that sort of stuff. That's great. But in terms of physical numbers for a player that cost us X amount of money, which at the time was our highest transfer fee, it didn't really click. The Bale thing, this is we were paying 300k a week for 10 goals from a player that is not going to get better. He's not going to be better next season, even though he might be playing at Real Madrid. And I looked at his numbers for the 3 seasons before he joined us. He never got past double figures in terms of goal, and he made 29 appearances in terms of his total. So there was one season, I think it was a 2018-19 season, Bale made 29 appearances and scored 8 league goals. For a player that the season or 2 before that was scoring upwards of 16 plus goals. So this thing about Bale was going to be, we lost 10 goals. Who did he score against? What teams did we can say that Bale turned up against in the big games? Because he didn't. He was not played in the team every single week. He was never going to play 2 games a week. So I think 300k for someone to play a bit part is a lot of money.
But Sam,
I think now looking at this, go on.
But he turned up in the smaller games. He won us the game against Brighton. He won us the game against Leicester City. So just because he doesn't turn up in the big games, and you're right, he didn't. He turned up in the smaller games where other players didn't. And we haven't replaced that. We played Watford the other day. Who scored? Nothing from open play. And that's my concern with this squad. There's no goals. If Kane and Son are playing, brilliant. If they're not clicking or one's injured, Bergwijn doesn't look like he's going to score. Every shot is just power, never placed. The Celso in and out of the squad, and Ndombele not in the squad. Then you look at the other side, Dele Alli. Dele Alli's missing chances for fun.
Edge.
Yeah, it's not the same Dele. So
would you be more?
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, Stel. I was just going to ask you. Right. Would you be more concerned if Dele wasn't getting into those positions, creating those chances, rather than him? Obviously, I know we'd all like him to be scoring, but would you be more worried if he wasn't creating those chances or getting into those areas to be in for a chance to score a goal?
It's the same for me. He has to score it. He can get in the position for the next 35 games of the season and miss every chance. He needs to score these chances, man. He's not missing. He's not missing difficult chances. He didn't even hit the target. He knocked it wide. It's like, I don't know. Listen, what
if Dele got back to the numbers he was getting back 3-4 years ago when he was knocking in 50?
Brilliant.
But this is the point I'm trying to make. We don't know what he's going to do. I'm thinking that this manager is definitely making him play better. We can all see that he is working. Jose drained the life out of him. That guy didn't want to play.
He's better defensively.
Right. So my point again, and you're right in that sense, but you don't need to always score 3 or 4 goals to win a game of football. If you can improve your defense, which we look like we have, you don't have to score 3 goals like what we had against West Ham. When you're 3-0 up, you should never, and I repeat, never come away without winning that game with 10 minutes to go.
Yeah, I agree.
Always 100% win that game. What happened?
Shane, were you feeling like?
Go on.
Sorry. No, my fault, Shane. I was going to say, were you feeling like, what you were saying with Gareth Bale, like with 300K a week, with the numbers that he had at the end of the season for 300K a week, you feel like you would rather almost take a chance on, even though we know Bergwijn and Dele can't hit, can't hit Ocean, if there was, it just feels like, like with 300K a week, you would want him to be hitting 20 goals, a season, 20 assists a season. You would want him, obviously, we didn't expect Gareth Bale to be challenging for that, but that's kind of the point is, 300K a week, you do kind of consider you should have actually done exactly what he did, if not more.
100%. If you're saying they brought Bale in at 300K a week because they were probably going to profit off shirt sales, I can understand that rhetoric. I can understand that. But forget the shirt sales. Just look at what you're paying 300K a week for. 10 goals. Let's say he goes into next season. If he was here this season and he gets injured for the first 5 or 6 weeks, 300K a week. We've already got players on significant wages that I think a player like Bale, who is not getting better. That was my point. And a lot of people saying, "Oh, we've not." Go on, sorry.
Sam, the question isn't him justifying his price tag. He can earn 100 grand a week, 50 grand, 500 grand.
Yeah.
For me, it's a point of we haven't replaced him with someone that can get those goals. In my opinion, that's the point I'm making. Who's replacing those goals? Listen, we can get an academy kid.
Yep.
Let's say Scarlett scores 10 goals this year. Dane Scarlett. He's on 10 grand a week. Brilliant. He's replaced Bale's goals. But as it stands now, where do you guys see those goals coming from? Because I can't see it.
Hand that to Mike.
Should we be expecting them, Bergwijn and Lucas? And I mean, maybe Lucas, has had a lot of opportunities too. But the likes of Bergwijn and other players, Dele Alli, should be the ones then that should be hitting 10 goals. When you really think about it, a lot of players do hit 10 goals. It's not really asking necessarily too much of your third player to get there. We know Sonny's going to get there. We know Kane's going to get there. Sorry.
Why does that one player? Again, we can have 2 or 3 players. Sorry, Mike. Sorry, I'll let you go because there's lots of what we can talk about.
I was just going to say, I was just going to echo what you were going to say there, Sam. From my perspective, there's a collective of players who I think, if they all contribute to the team in terms of scoring, I mean, if you look at Bergwijn, Lucas, Ali, Lo Celso, Bergwijn, there's 5 players just off the top of my head who they only have to equal Bale's goal tally. They have to get a couple of goals each. And they've matched it. I know at the moment it doesn't look like we're scoring that sort of goals to warrant those numbers. But is that not the way that Nuno set us up at the moment? Because if you're playing 3 in the midfield, really and truly, Højbjerg and Skip, you only need 1 defensive midfielder and 1 attacking player and 1 box to box for that sort of triangle to be effective. If you've got Skip and Højbjerg, who are both... I know there's arguments that Højbjerg for Norway played further forward than what he does at Tottenham, but for Tottenham, I don't see him as that sort of creative midfielder. I see him more as someone that's just going to press, break up play, give it to the more attacking players for them to advance and to create the chances that we need to score goals. Same with Skip. I see him more as a defensive player. If you're playing 3 in the midfield, you could argue that maybe Nuno's played the first 3 games with that midfield 3 because he wasn't sure what was going on with a few of the other players in the squad. But if the way I see it, if Nuno can coach and work that back line insofar as he's got Sanchez and Dyer keeping clean sheets in the first 3 Premier League games, I'd like to think, or I'm hoping, I'm being optimistic here, I'd like to think that he can do something with us as an attacking team to get more goals. Don't you think he's already doing that? Because I think he's getting the chance. We're creating chances. I think, like Stel says, we're just not knocking the balls in. We're just knocking the balls in the back of the net.
Harry, I don't think we're creating enough chances.
Do you not think at the moment?
Okay, look at the Wolves game. People saying, "Oh, but we had 6 shots. 3 of those shots came in 5 seconds." Bergwijn's hit the shot, goalie saved it. Son comes in, rebound, ball comes back to Son, blocked. So 50% of the chances came in 5 seconds. For me,
didn't we have 2 1-on-1s that game? Didn't we have like the Kane 1-on-1 and then the Sonny 1-on-1 that they both missed?
With the Watford game,
the Kane. So did I say what? Did I say Watford? I meant Wolves. Beg your pardon. Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Yeah, I think that was also in the Wolves game. I think they had 2 1-on-1s, both Sonny and Kane. I think Sonny had 1 in the first half, and then kind of in the beginning of the game.
We had 6 chances, so probably 2 were 1-on-1s then.
Yeah,
so 2
and then the rest were that chance you were talking about.
For me, the way I look at Tottenham at the moment is if you set up in a 4-3-3, that is a possession-based formation. And it's a very flexible formation because it can quickly go into something else if you want to adjust it in the game. But you cannot play a 4-3-3 with 2 holding mids in the midfield 3. You're basically giving up possession of the ball. And that's why we get dominated in games where we're playing that system against teams that play 4 in the middle or 5 in the middle. And that's exactly what Wolves did to us. Plus it's lopsided and it exposes the channels, and that's why Tanganga was getting ripped by Traore because there was no one in the middle shuffling over to cover Tanganga, who's having to push up higher to engage with Traore, and that system for me is not an offensive system. If you play 2 holding mids, if you play 1 holding mid, and Harry Kane, who plays up top, drops to allow the 2 up front to overlap, then I get it. But we're not doing that. We're not doing that. When I watched us against Pacos de Ferreira and we played 3 at the back, 1 holding mid. That's the best football I've seen Tottenham play this season. I thought, wow. I don't know they're Pacos de Ferreira, but then when we played Watford, who aren't that great, we did it again. 4-3-3, 2 holding mids. And it's just for me, I don't think that works. If you're going to play with 2 holding mids, go 4-5-1 or 4-2-3-1. And then I can understand it.
I also think that hindered. Well, I think, and again, I'm not saying he had a bad performance, but I think Tanganga as a defensive right back hinders that 4-3-3 as well. Because I think when you see Emerson come in and you have sort of 2 options going down the left and right, you're going to see sort of creative output from flanks as well as the middle. Because I agree with what you're saying. You can afford to play 1 defensive midfielder, like I was saying, against Watford, a team that's going to play a deep 4-5-1. You can afford to play 1 defensive midfielder and bring in somebody like Ndombele or Lo Celso. So I agree with you on that. But I also think that you can play 2 holding midfielders, but your creation has to come from the wide players. And that's sort of what Liverpool do because their midfield is so workmanlike. They had Wijnaldum, Henderson and Fabinho. And you're not really expecting a lot of chance creation from any of those 3 players. So what they do is they have somebody like Trent who's going to be able to create from either out wide or drop into the middle from right back and be able to create chances from there. So I think it's based on the opposition. I think when Emerson comes in, you'll see the 4-3-3 work a lot more. But I do agree with you. I don't see why people are saying a 3 at the back is a defensive formation because it's not.
Liverpool have got the players to do that.
They do.
An attacking wing back. Tanganga's not an attacking wing back.
But that's what I'm saying. Emerson's come in now. So when Emerson,
now maybe.
So that's what I'm saying. I agree. I agree with that. I agree with that. I agree with that point about Tanganga. Tanganga, as good as he was, we had to get a right back in, and I realised that from when we played Watford. If a team's going to defend so deep, you cannot have somebody like Tanganga basically wasting chances, in my opinion. So I think you were going to see probably a difference with the team. But again, like you said, a 3-4-3 could work just as well, and a 3-5-2 could work as well.
Let me just come to get his thoughts on. Do you think that the team itself at the moment was lopsided, and do you think now that we've got certain players in that balance can be now addressed? Based on what Stell's saying, and to some degree I do agree, I don't believe the players that played in that 4-3-3 played it right. I think you can still play a 4-3-3 with 2 holding midfielders, but not necessarily call them holding midfielders, because those midfield 3 should be fluid. They should be able to go back in when you got one that stays. You can surely go back into a 4-2-3-1. The 4-3-3 allows you to be very flexible, and that 100% I agree. But do you think, Sid, that the players that we've now got in can maybe address that balance and there'll be more flexibility in Nuno's approach?
I think even before he in this transfer window, we've got the players, we've got the flexibility, and I think I mentioned this before as well. The problem we've got with Højbjerg and Skip is, for me, they're both too defensive. So when they both got the ball, they spend more time defensive and not enough attacking. Now, Skip last season for Norwich City, from what I gather and what I saw, he was the main man in midfield. He used to get the ball deep into his own half, and he was running. The amount of clippage I've seen of him running all the way to the opponents and either getting fouled outside the area or getting a penalty. I've not seen enough of that at Spurs.
But I think that's going to be Højbjerg. Do you think that's going to be Højbjerg's role? Last season, he was playing defensive, and I think that he can do that role where he can be a box-to-box. Do you think that's why
they're too similar. They're just identical players.
Would you push Højbjerg slightly? Would you give him more freedom to be a bit more forward in his play?
Look at the Euros. I think that's a great example of what he can do if he's given more free role forward. He got 4 assists in the Euros, didn't he?
He did that a bit against Watford. He pushed a bit more forward second half, and he actually looked all right at it. I have to say.
And he can win the ball higher up as well. Don't forget as well, because he's